We're live.
Fab.
Let me pause that. Cool, guys, how are we doing? Welcome to It's a State of Mind podcast. Welcome if you're watching on Facebook or if you are watching or listening on the podcast. So today I'm joined by Pamela Langan. Rubbish. Pam is an absolute expert in reigniting careers, and giving people confidence in their career to be able to move forwards with it. You know, I talk a lot about career jail, being stuck in career jail. And Pam is absolutely brilliant in getting the best out of men and women to the place that they want to be in their career, right? And Pam come and spoke to us in the mastermind, to all of the guys, and has helped many guys in our mastermind get the jobs that they've been desiring and looking forward to, giving the confidence. So Pam's going to join us today. We're going to ask some questions. We're just going to have a chit chat about it and hopefully offer you tons of value. So I've kind of introduced you, Pam.
Yeah.
But if you want to maybe go in and give us a little bit more of an insight into like what you do.
Okay, so what I do basically is help professionals smash their career goals. So even if they think, you know, they don't know what is next or or what they want to do next, it's about you know, working with them to look at what they've already done, where they'd like to be going forward, and helping them to achieve those goals in the fastest possible time. Because if you're ready to move on, then you're ready. And I think for lots of people, being ready to move on you know, can cause a lot of stress, because they start to think, well, what about the interview? What about the CV? What about, you know, finding the new role and all of that kind of stuff? So I'm here to help make that process super easy, so that people can, you know, be ready to move on and just do it really easy and really smoothly. Right. And without any stress, basically.
Yeah, and you're really good. I know you've been working with like 3 or 4 of our guys, and they've moved forwards in their careers, right? Got out of that career rut or / jail that I always talk about. And one of the things I always find with men is that we just put up with it. It's like getting punched in the face, right? I always think about anything to do with life, you know, unhappiness, jobs, and career is a really big one, because for a lot of guys, it really dictates their mood and the way that they live their life, right? With work-life balance. And I feel that if we end up going into a career, let's say at 27, and we retire at 67?
Yeah.
That's like 40 years. And if you don't find something that you love or you have passion for in terms of job wise, it can be like you might as well go to jail, right? So that's where I get the emphasis to get, like, if you've got a boss who's a dick, you might as well murder him, go to jail, come back out and find another job. So it's you've got to be happy, right, in your job. What made you get into this?
I think for me, so throughout my career, so I kind of progressed through my career really quickly, and that was because I literally planned it to precision. And every single new job I started, there was always the next job in mind. So it was about moving from, you know, step to step, but really quickly. It was about taking risks. It was about taking leaps that, you know, people said, oh, you're not quite ready for that. But it was about taking control and ownership, really. And, you know, really kind of looking into, well, am I ready? Have I got the experience? Where are the gaps? What do I need to do to fill the gaps? So for me, it was about moving with pace. And at the, you know, back in the early years, it was about, you know, chasing the pay rises as well. It was all about the money. And then as I got more and more senior, then it became more about job satisfaction and, you know, what did I want to do next, and what skills and experiences did I want to have at that point in my career. So I think for me, it was planned, and the plan was executed, and it worked really well for me.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm teaching people to do now, because most people will go through their career and they'll start a new job and they'll think, okay, let's go through the induction phase, let's get our feet under the table, let's understand the job, and then in a couple of years, when I've learned this job, then I'll be ready to move on. And then they start thinking, you know, they start thinking about moving on, and they might be in a toxic work environment, they might have a toxic boss, they might have all of these other factors going on, and then all of a sudden they're like, right, I'm ready to move on, but now I've lost confidence, I don't know what I want to do next. And they get stuck. So if you plan your career, and if you are looking at every step, so if you're planning like 3 or 4 steps out, then you're constantly working towards something. So if you're having a bad day, then it's not about, my life is awful and this is the worst job in the world. It's about, what can I do today to move me forward? Because if you've got that plan and you know what the next step is, rather than getting sucked into the negativity or the hating of the job or the hating of the situation, it's about, okay, well, what can I take from today? What have I learned? What do I need to do today that's going to add to my skill set that means I can move forward faster? So that for me is what it's all about, and that's exactly what I did. I mean, I moved through my career really quickly. I did some jobs I loved. I did some jobs that I hated. I had some awful bosses. I had one boss that tried to get me fired because he didn't want me on his team. He inherited me onto the team. He didn't like that. So, my career has been, I moved through it really quickly, but equally there's been lots of challenges along the way. But I always went back to the plan. And I always went back to like, what's the ultimate goal? Where am I going to?
The mission.
The mission. It's the career mission, isn't it? It's the career mission. No way. Right. I need a t-shirt.
We're just gonna get the man coach off and put the career queen on.
Yes.
Cool. So for guys, what do you find? So like, what do you find is like the biggest standout problem for a lot of guys who are going through this career slump or career plateau or career jail? Like, you're going, and the thing with men, right? We go through different stages of our lives. We evolve. Like, when we're in our early 30s or late 20s, it's usually we're having kids, we're getting married, and then we kind of get to late 40s and we're kind of like, this is a bit stale. And then you're kind of looking for some adventure and escapism, like we talk about this a lot, right? In the mastermind. And what do you think that one thing is that really holds men back from making a change in their career?
I think most of the men that I work with, what I find is that the thing that is the real kind of blocker on them moving forward is a lot of the time down to their ego. So it's kind of like, don't want to step outside the comfort zone because what if I look stupid? What if I don't get that job? What if people say, it's not the right time for me? And I think it holds a lot of men back, because I think for women it's slightly different, because I think men think quite logically, and it's like kind of they find it easier to execute a career plan when they've got one in place, but then I think they can feel really worried about stepping outside the comfort zone, because what if they don't get that job? And that's the thing when I work with men. It's always like, I don't want to be humiliated, I don't want to step outside that comfort zone just in case I look stupid. Whereas for women, it's, women will be won't be thinking more from an emotional point of view. So they'll be more kind of upset if they don't get the role, rather than being humiliated that they didn't get the role.
Yeah, I mean, that's a truth for a lot of guys, isn't it? I think it's always putting ourselves on the line. It's always kind of putting yourselves on the line. I think there's always that element of like self-humiliation, or like, I don't want to look like a failure. I think failure is a big thing that we always deal with, right? Or the fear of failure, when actually the relationship with failure should be a positive one, because if we don't get the job and we've learned something, I remember chatting to a lot of the guys in the mastermind, and like, I didn't get the job, I didn't get your job, but it was a case of, what did you learn? What can you take away? And actually, do you think there's this is just me and my wild mind, but do you think there's an element of, look, I think there's always a reason whether you get a job or whether you don't get a job, whether that circumstances comes into it, in terms of it's kind of meant to be. Also, it's like moving a house, right? You find a house, you go through this, and then you lose the house, and you're like, we've been trying to move for the last 4 years, and any house that we would have bought in those 4 years, we would have to move again.
Yeah.
We found the right house at the right time. So do you think timing is something that's key with this?
Yeah, definitely. And I always say, when I'm prepping people for interviews, I always say to them, look, you can go in as prepared as, you know, as ever, but if this is not meant for you, then you're not going to get it. So what you need to do is you need to go into the situation prepared. You need to learn from the situation. And if you get offered it because it's meant for you, then great. But if you don't, it's about what did you learn, and knowing that, you know, the right job is out there for you, and not getting too hung up on the failure, because, you know, you're not going to get every single job that you go for. You know, you're not going to get that. I mean, people do, but it's very rare. And I think, you know, if you look, I mean, I would say if you look at a job search as more of a marathon than, like, you know, a short sprint, you know, you will tackle that in a way that is the least stressful way possible, because otherwise what you'll do is, most people go into the job search and start thinking about moving jobs, and they start thinking about, you know, I need to find that job, I need to go for that interview, I need to secure that job, and job done, and I'm into the next job. But it doesn't always happen that way. So if you go into that process with your eyes open, really, and it's like, okay, so I might need to go for 4, 5, 6 interviews before I get offered the right job. But just going in with that knowledge that you're going to get offered the job that is right for you, the one where you go in and you connect in the right way with those employers, because ultimately you don't just want to be offered any job, you want to be offered the one that's right for you. So all of those factors that play into that are really important.
Okay, right. So let's like talk. Let's give some guys some values in terms of, right, I'm a guy, I'm 40 years old, well, I'm 43 years old, and I want to change career, right? So like, I've got home one night and I'm sick and tired of the job, and sick and tired of my boss, and sick and tired of doing this, and I'm not fulfilled anymore. What's the number one? So where do we go from here? Let's work through a time frame of, what's the first step?
Okay, so when you realize that it's time to make a move, it's about you know, sitting down. Day one is about working out, okay, why do you want to move? So 9 times out of 10, it's not because you know, you hating the job is never really the reason why you want to leave. Usually there's a person, usually it's the work, that, you know, there's always something there that is stopping you from enjoying that job at that time. Now, a lot
honesty. We need honesty with ourselves.
So you've got to be really honest with yourself. So what I always say is, sit down, get a pen and a piece of paper out, and literally just write down everything that you love and hate about the current position. Now, that isn't going to give you all of the answers, but what that is going to do is that is going to make it clear to you what is going wrong. And I think when things start coming up, so if you start recognizing things, you know, if you've got a list of like 20 things you hate and only 3 things that you love, you know, that's when it starts becoming obvious this might not be the right job or career path for you. So
nice, simple, if you like, audit. It's like we talk about the life audit, right? In so it's almost like a career audit of pros and cons about where you are.
Yeah, exactly. And it is literally just, I mean, I always say put love and hate on top, because although hate's quite a strong word, it's like, it's just easier to say what you love and what you hate. And when you start feeling like that, you usually have more things that you hate than you love. So then what I always say then is, once you've got your list, it's about going through the hate section and working out what you can change and what you can't change, because then you'll know if it's time to move on. Now, you can end up in a situation, and this is true for lots of men as well, because they'll stay in a job and just stay in that job for like a long period of time, and they'll start hating it, but they won't really know why. They won't really question it. They'll just carry on day in, day out, and then they'll get to the point where they like don't want to go in anymore. So if you go through that hate list, and it's like, it's almost analyzing each word that you've put on there, like, you know, why am I feeling like this? What's coming up for me? You know, what is making me feel like so much hatred towards, you know, this particular thing? And once you start going through that, you know, a lot of things that come out for people are things like, you know, I could do my boss's job. You know, I am not getting paid enough for the work I'm doing. I've took on all of this extra work, and you know, I'm not being compensated for that. And when you start going through your list and all of them things are coming up, when I do that with a client, I'm like, right, okay, what is this telling you right now? And, you know, sometimes it takes a while for people to realize, but when you're starting to think that you can do your manager's job, that you're not getting paid enough, these are all signs it's time to move on. And that could be that it's time to go for a promotion, or it could be that actually, you know, you've done everything that you can do in this particular career or job, and it's time to make a sideways move, or it's time to move into a different industry. So then that's kind of like part one, where you go, right, okay, so what is it that I'm ready for? Is it a complete career change, or is it a promotion, which effectively is a career change, because you're going to be stepping up into almost the unknown in a lot of cases, and you know, changing what you're going to be doing day to day, taking on more responsibility. So that is always like part one, just working out whether it's the job or if it's time to, you know, to go for the promotion.
Okay. So that requires a little bit of self-awareness, right? So guys, if you're watching this as well, let us know if this type of stuff is resonating with you, and if this is stuff that you go through in terms of mindset as well. But communicate with us so that me and Pam can like talk about some of the comments. I've already seen from Robert saying it's amazing exactly where I was going with the audit, and he is doing that with his audit as well in terms of his career. So guys, if any of this resonates, please do like shout out as well. So we've done the evaluation. We've decided to move. I've looked at my list and went, fuck this, it's time to move on. I don't want to do this anymore. What's my step 2?
Okay, so step 2 now is about working out like what is next. So it could be that, so there's a couple of different pathways that you can go down. So it could be that step 2 is you need to you need to stay in the position and maybe make some changes, have some difficult conversations, start managing up, start managing across, you know, whatever it is. It could be that it's time for a promotion. So you're going to start going into job search mode and start thinking about your personal branding, about your CV, about your cover letter, about your LinkedIn profile, starting to prep for the interviews. Or it could be that actually you are ready for a career change. So it's about then looking at the transferable skills and what you could take to another industry. Now, lots of people struggle with the transferable skills element, and literally there isn't a single person yet that I've worked with that I've not been able to pull out some level of transferable skills from them, because
what's that process that you do with them to do that? Because I imagine that for men we have self-limiting beliefs about what we think we're capable of, and it's not until you sit down and go, oh wow, like when you start extracting, what's your process? That's quite interesting. That.
So I suppose it's what I usually do is go through all of the competencies for the current role. So things like leadership, teamwork, you know, the commercial awareness, all of the key elements of a job that you do on a day-to-day basis that you don't realize. So for example, if you're a leader in manufacturing, then you can easily move over and be a leader in retail. But you know, if you speak to recruiters and things like that are specifically manufacturing or retail, then they'll say to you, oh well, you know, you haven't got the right skill set, but it's just because you've not got the right industry experience on there. So it's about pulling out all of the things that are relevant. So if you're applying for, you know, you could use as an example, you could use like a sales role as an example. So a guy that I've been working with recently has been working in pharmaceutical sales for the last like 20 years. And he wants to come out of that now and move into a more account management role because he's fed up being on the road. But because everything he sold is pharmaceuticals, he's finding it hard to articulate, you know, how he can then go and work in maybe an account management role, or how he could maybe switch over into a more retail role rather than being like, you know, kind of niching in that pharmaceutical area. And what we've done with him is basically sat down and gone, right, okay, take out the industry and what are the skills. So you're dealing with customers every day, you are building client relationships, you are working with different partners, different stakeholders, you are selling products. So it doesn't, if you can sell a product, you can sell any product. Yeah. So it's about taking away that industry specific stuff and pulling out all of the key skills. So anything that is related to sales, from building relationships to selling to, you know, to demonstrating how products work or the features and benefits of a product. Like you can do that for one product, you can do that for any. So it's about pulling that all out on the CV. So rather than, so he's got one version of his CV that is all like about pharmaceuticals and the products he's sold and the clients he's worked with, and then he's got another version now, which is all about sales and selling and those key sales skills that he brings to the table, that he can bring to the table in any industry.
Do you like, so with that process, if I'm a guy and I want to, like, I'm in sales for retail and I want to go into sales for something else, do you think that like you have to be able to bring out a level of confidence in that person? So in that, like, one thing that I always find with men is that we have to extract confidence because of maybe past experiences in a job, past experience in childhood or school. So there is an element of confidence about feeling good enough to be able to go into it. Oh, I'm not. Is that a restriction that you get a lot, or a
so that's definitely something that comes up. So another exercise that I do when people are struggling to see how they can kind of make that move, or, you know, what they can bring to the table, is I always get them to sit down and write out all of the evidence. So, and the confidence essentially comes from the evidence, because they start writing down all of the things that they've achieved, you know, all of the relationships that they've built, all of the contracts they've secured, you know, that they've smashed the sales targets month in, month out for the last 10 years or whatever it is. When they start writing that down, that's when, you know, you see the change. So usually we do it over Zoom. And I say to them, like, write it down and tell me, you know, talk me through the achievements, talk me through, you know, essentially it's almost like I kind of put them on the spot, and it's almost like an interview situation, but because it's a little bit more relaxed, you know, you can get more out of people. So it's like, tell me what, you know, what you've delivered over the last, say, 3 to 5 years, and they start writing it down and talking through, when you can really see the passion. So then you see the change in people, and then that's when I'm like, right, okay, so how confident, and usually what I'll say to them at the start of the session is, how confident do you feel? And then we'll go through that exercise where they're talking through everything that they've delivered and what they've brought to the table. And then at the end of that, I'm like, right, how are you feeling now? And guarantee, you know, they're like kind of 3, 4 out of 10. And then by the time we've done that, they're like 8 or 9 out of 10, because they start remembering all of the stuff that they've done. So what I'd say to anyone is, if you're kind of thinking, and I suppose imposter syndrome is huge for most people, especially in the corporate world, because it's almost like, you know, who am I to go for that promotion? Who am I to take the next step? You know, have I really got what it takes? And you can really talk yourself down. So I think if you've got that list, which also will be great to add onto your CV, your cover letter and your LinkedIn profile, so you've got it all there, and you've literally got a list of everything that you've achieved and everything that you've delivered for the previous companies over the last 3 to 5 years. And I always say 3 to 5 years as well, because that is going to be the most relevant experience for, you know, to take forward. So, you know, it's good if you've done stuff 10, 15 years ago, but essentially that's brought you to where you are today. So if you think, what have I done over the last 3 to 5 years? What have I delivered? And, you know, what have I achieved? What have I done for the company? And, you know, in terms of the company, you should always be thinking in terms of, you know, how have I made the money? How have I saved the money? How did I improve processes? How have I improved employee engagement? You know, what are all of the good stuff that you've brought to the table? And if you write them down, all of a sudden you're like, okay, I can do this. I'm ready for this, because you've got the evidence in front of you. When you're just thinking it through in your head, it's so easy to put yourself down and almost rubbish yourself and rubbish your experience. But as soon as it's on the paper, you can't argue with it.
We do that in life all the time, though, don't we? This is not just about even our career. I know we're specifically talking about the career, but we do this with our own other achievements, right? And like a big one is parenting. We always put ourselves down parenting, right? And then actually write down all the things that we do. I mean, this is great. A lot of the guys are really agreeing with this as well. So guys, if you're just joining us, and with Pam, we're talking about building and reigniting careers and forward thinking. Now, whenever I do my shows, I always talk about career jail. And I always talk about like the process of moving a job, right? But what we're doing here is really dissecting that statement, or that very small thought process of changing your direction into steps in a minute. So we kind of looked at 2 steps, right? Self-awareness, the audit, 2, identifying transferable skills. And then so from here, I've heard you talk about CVs a lot. Would creating a CV be the next step?
Yeah, I think creating a CV, no matter what part of your career you're in, is always a good thing, because I think if you've always got an up-to-date CV, you're constantly putting on all of the achievements, all the things that you've done. Now, what I always say is you should always have a base CV. So a base CV is essentially a document where you are going to hold every single thing that you've done within each job role, every achievement, like anything where you think, do you know what, that was really good and I'm really proud of that. And then you collate it all in one space. And that can end up being 6 or 8 pages long, but that's not going to be the version that you send in for your job applications. That is literally going to be your starting point, your base point, where you will go into that document and you'll pull out all of the essential things and all of the relevant things for future job applications. But ultimately, you've got it all in the one place. And that is also, the confidence exercise, where you kind of writing everything down and getting everything in one place. If you're having a bad day in work and you're thinking, this is like the worst day and my career's over, whatever's going on, you just open up that document and you're like, do you know what, I'm actually pretty good at what I'm doing, and this is just a bad day. So I think I always say to people, the CV is the starting point of your job search. You need a CV before you start your job search. But ultimately, you need a CV as a working document, as something that is constantly rolling, something that you're always adding to, so that you've got it.
How often would you add to it?
What I did, I'll say what I did and then what I recommend to my clients. So I used to update my CV every single quarter, and I do something called a self-appraisal. So generally in the corporate world, you will have a few appraisals a year, depending on how good your manager is. So what I always advise people to do is to do their own. So that's where you're going through the day-to-day and the week-to-week and the month-to-month, but every quarter you pull out all of the key bits and put that into your CV, so that you've got that and it's constantly rolling. And what that means is, at any point when you spot an opportunity, because you never know when an opportunity is going to present itself. Somebody might tell you about a job, you might spot a job online, you might get an alert from, something you set up ages ago. And if you've got to then wait until you've got your CV together, that is going to take time. You might miss that opportunity. So I always say, keep it rolling, keep adding to it, and then you've got it there ready to go. So as soon as you spot an opportunity, you're ready to strike on it. So an example from this week is somebody's been offered an internal promotion, but they've had 2 positions prior, and now they're trying to get the CV updated, and they're kind of in a position where they're like, well, can we get your CV because we want you to go for this internal promotion? And they're like, oh, can you just give me 24 hours because now I need to update it. Whereas if you're constantly updating it, you're always ready for those opportunities.
All right, yeah, that makes sense. So CV is obviously a really important part of it really is like a key in terms of the attributes that you hold, in terms of the skills and making sure that's up to date. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I've done my self-awareness thing. I've got my transferable skills. I've got it all down on my CV. Where am I going from here?
So now you're going to start the job search. So you're going to start looking for what you want, and also, thinking about, so lots of people start the job search and they just think, right, let's find the job. Okay, what am I going to search for? I'm going to search for job title. Then I'm going to search for the salary, and then I'm going to see what comes up. And then if it looks all right, then I'll send off my CV and I'll apply for it. But what happens then is you are kind of passing over the control of your job search to somebody else. So what you want to be doing is identifying the companies that you'd like to work for and the positions that you'd like to work for, and then actively contacting those people, even if there aren't any jobs available at that time. And also checking, once you've kind of got your list of the companies you'd like to work for, I always say, there's got to be between 5 and 10 companies in your local area that would be, that you'd like to work for. They might not have openings at that time, but what you can do is you can start creating, I always say create it in a spreadsheet or a Google sheet. And then what you can do then is add them on. You can check their job boards weekly. You can set up alerts on some of them, and you can start targeting them. So rather than just kind of trawling the job boards, you're kind of taking ownership and control. You can start contacting those companies and letting them know what you deliver, what you can bring to the table, and asking them if there are any opportunities in the future. Could you be considered for that? Now, I did that twice in my career and got an interview both times when they weren't recruiting. So that's what you call the hidden jobs market, when those jobs have not yet been advertised. They're thinking about them. They've potentially got a space, but they've not advertised it yet. So you can get in there first. You can save them a load of money on recruitment fees, and you can get into a company that you consider to be, on your dream company list, or, on the desired companies that you'd like to work for list. And you can then take control of that. So you go into that position, in control. So you've gone to them, you've told them what you can deliver, and they're willing to kind of take that chance on you and bring you into the company because you've reached out to them, and you've took that first step. And I think for sales roles particularly, that goes a long way, because if you can put yourself out there and you can show them that you can sell yourself, then they're the type of people that they want to sell for them.
Yeah, man, 100%. So where's the, like, if you had to choose the top 2 places for people to go looking for jobs these days, there are some people that naturally won't have much of or much of a clue or confidence, but what would your top 2 maybe search bases be?
So I'd say LinkedIn, definitely. That LinkedIn seems to be getting like a high portion of the jobs that are on job boards at the moment are all getting fed through LinkedIn as well. So I'd say LinkedIn, and also Indeed, because Indeed, out of all of the job boards, so I use Indeed for recruitment, for my other businesses, and also for recruiting for clients as well. And Indeed vet all of the applications, so you can't just put any old application onto Indeed, any old job spec onto Indeed. Indeed vet them all. Indeed call every single person up and check the job with them. So they're probably one of the better ones to look at. I mean, some of the job boards, you'll find the same job is on multiple boards because they all feed into each other. But I'd say in terms of where to start and narrowing the search down, LinkedIn and Indeed, because they've got all of the job boards, you can save the jobs in my jobs section, but LinkedIn and Indeed are probably the easiest to use, and they're the ones that I'd recommend. And
I've got a question. We just, before we go into the next step, you think so let's say I'm on LinkedIn, I am on LinkedIn, but let's say I was like looking and hunting for a job. Do you think it's important for me to be setting up my LinkedIn page in a particular way? And do you think it's important that making sure my social media, do you think employees are looking at social media more these days?
Yeah, so that is what I was going to say. So that was a brilliant question. So with LinkedIn, if you're going to apply for a job on LinkedIn, you need to make sure that your profile reflects the job that you're applying for, because there's literally nothing worse as a recruiter or a hiring manager. Somebody applies for the job. So say, for example, someone applied for a sales manager job that I was recruiting for, and when I clicked onto their profile, everything on their profile is about being a project manager. So I was like, which part of this person has thought, to apply for a sales manager role and then have a fully kind of LinkedIn profile that's all about being a project manager and what they've achieved, and nothing at all sales related. So straight away, that person would be discounted. Now, I called that person because I was really interested to see why have they done that, and they did have some really good sales experience, but they'd just forgotten to update their profile, and in the past they'd applied for project manager role. So I think your headline is really important. If you need to put the job title that you would like to achieve into your headline. Yeah. If you don't, you will get discounted by recruiters and people using LinkedIn as a way of finding candidates for their jobs. So headline is key. Summary, or the about section as it's also known, you need to put in some information around what you do, what you deliver. Also, it's a good opportunity to put in, a little bit of personality, maybe, talk about the things that you like doing that are related to the job, and also areas of expertise as well, because that's where keywords are essential. If you've not got the right keywords in your summary or your headline, then you just won't get found in searches. And then the next bit is the experience section. Most people don't scroll down to the experience section, but you should have a description of what you're doing in your day-to-day job and what you're achieving and delivering in there as well. And if you don't, then you're missing a trick, really, because if you've got your LinkedIn profile set up and people can use the right keywords to find you, then that is going to cut down the amount of time you're spending on your job search massively, because you'll start getting recruiters coming to you rather than you chasing down different jobs and applying for all kinds of stuff. They will start coming to you because you're coming up in searches, but that will only happen if you put the right keywords in there. And it takes about a week to update as well. So you should keep an eye on it in the searches section. Yeah. If you click on that, you can see who searched you and what keywords they found you for. So you need to just keep adjusting that until you get them found for the right words. Okay.
So in theory, the way you've explained it is that your LinkedIn profile is probably just as important as your CV, like in that respect, that first impression type of thing. So get it straightened out, guys. All right, let's move on. So we've got the 4 steps. What would you say? So we've gone to the job search, which we talked about, either LinkedIn or Indeed. And now what?
So, this is where you're going to, so if you've got everything set up, if you've got all of the key skills and everything that you've got and what you can deliver on your CV, you're going to get asked to interview for that role. Right. So then it's about being prepared for the interview. So give me just your top 3 tips to be prepared for it. I'm going to put you on the spot slightly. I am this is like just like this podcast. Hey Pam, are you free? With but I'm just conscious of time. So if we were to give the guys, or the men listening who are getting value from this, your top 3 tips to go into an interview with, and then if they want any more, they can come and ask you on your LinkedIn page. But what would they be? Okay, so when you're preparing for an interview, the first thing is to make sure that you fully understand the company, everything about the company. So you want to Google them, you want to find out all the latest news on them, especially at the moment. You want to know how COVID has affected them, because that's where you can show commercial awareness and how you can come in and help them to get their company back on track, or whatever it is that, that's been impacted by COVID or similar types of things that are going on in the world. So that's the first thing, making sure you know the ins and outs of the company so that you can demonstrate how you can support them. Number 2 is to make sure that you have got all of your stories created in advance. So you need to find out what the competencies are for that role. So you can, say for example, it's like a sales manager role. What are all of the competencies? So it's going to be selling, it's going to be building relationships, teamwork, so on and so on. So you need to make sure that you've got your stories for each of those competencies arranged in advance, so that you'll know them stories because they're yours, but you need to go through them. You need to put them in a logical order. And I always recommend using the STAR format to answer the questions, or the STAR method to answer the questions.
STAR method?
The STAR method, it's the situation, the task, the action, and the results. So you can't go wrong when you use the STAR method to answer interview questions, because if you're telling them, okay, so they ask you a question, so tell us about a time when, and then you'd say, okay, the situation was, my task was, the action that I took was, and the result was this. Yeah. So you talk them through, you're taking them through a really logical story. It's really easy to mark an interview answer when you're talking about it in that format, because as you're talking through, they can kind of tick off all of the boxes. So that is definitely really important. And then the third thing, this is like my kind of killer interview question to ask at the end. You should always ask them, have they got any reservations about offering you the position? Okay. And if some people will say, I'm not kind of as blunt as that. So maybe asking if they've got any reservations doesn't really sit right with them. So another way to word that is there anything else that you'd like to know about my experience? Because you give them then the opportunity to tell you or to ask you about any gaps that you might have left. And also you can walk out of the interview knowing there was nothing else that you could have done. And psychologically, if you say to them, have you got any reservations about offering me this position, or is there anything else you'd like to know about my experience? And they say to you, do you know what? Actually, no, there isn't anything. Then you walk out of there and they kind of are left sitting there thinking, this person is so right for this job because there's nothing else that we needed to know from them. And you can walk out knowing that you give them everything. So you're not, loads of people beat themselves up after interviews. If you ask that question, you'll never beat yourself up again after another interview.
That nugget is like the mic drop.
That is the best question.
You know what? I have to say, I'm like, personally, I'm really pleased I work for myself. Like, I think, I don't know. It's weird. I do often think to myself, God, how would I fit into the like the realms of work, not working for myself? And I think of all the interviews I've done, and I think, God blimey, if I knew all of this when I was interviewing, I'd feel like an elite operator, right? As we talk about. So, like, we've got 5 points there. Would you kind of like just say that would be it? So you've done the interview, and then I guess you get offered the job, and then you take the job. Is there anything else that you would add in terms of steps, or would you just say that that's a good 5-step method in terms of from the point of deciding you want to leave your job to the point where you're going for interviews?
I think the thing for me is it's never kind of like an A to B process. It's always a circle or a cycle. So the final point then is planning the next move. So it's always about, like, you should never start a new job without knowing what the next step is, because from that day one, I mean, I do first 90 days in your new job, I do first 180 days, 365 days, all of that stuff. It should never be about, I'm ready to find a new job, so now I'll find a new job, and then I go through this process, then I'm in the job, and we wait a while to start again. Every single day you should be moving your career forward. You should be moving towards the next step until you get to the point where you're like, right, this is the last position until I retire, so I'm going to stay here. And even then, I'm like, what can you do to raise your profile? What can you do to be the best that you can be in that job and feel great going in every day? So it's always a cycle, and it's always what is the next step. So that, what we've just talked about there is really one part of like the career process. Your whole career should be spent going around in that cycle, saying, right, okay, what's next? What I'm going to learn next? What have I learned so far? And it's always reflecting and moving forward.
Cool. I think we just have a slight glitch there on the thing. I don't know if it was a mind, but like, so we'll slowly wrap up, but I want to ask, this is all great advice, but I want to ask you, how do I word this? So let's say, how do you find the courage to want to change your career? So one of the biggest things that I find is that, like, for men, you know, I've worked with men for a long time, and one of the biggest things for guys to do is get themselves out of that rut.
Yeah.
You know, for people that are like deeply unhappy, and they just, it seems like, so if you imagine walking down a road and this road is like 4 miles long, you know, when you walk around that and you're going for a run, you're like, oh my God, I've got, like, I can see where I've got to run. And you visually know in your head, that's the same with your career. You look at this 4 mile thing and you're like, oh my God, it looks so distant. Do you think it's important to have like a time frame or a timeline, if you like, in terms of like how we're going to do this? Now, whenever I talk about changing career, I'm not an expert in it. I just talk about it in a common sense point of view. Yeah. So I'm very much like, look, guys, I don't mean just quit your job overnight. I mean, have a 6-month plan. Is that realistic? Is like a 6-month plan realistic, or is a 3-month plan realistic? And the reason I ask is anyone that's in that position where they're stuck in a rut and they feel like they can't get out, it's a case of, look, hey, can you do 3 months reverse engineer it, and maybe that sparks a fire or excitement about, hey, look, I can change this.
Yeah, I think definitely you should always put a timeline on it. And what I usually say is, if you are stuck in a rut and you're feeling really bad, like, you should be thinking, okay, what can I do over the next 4 weeks? What can I do to move forward? And it could be that you just simply writing out what you love and you hate and thinking about moving forward, but definitely put a timeline on it and move backwards. So anybody moving jobs, 99% of people are going to find a new job within 3 months. That's kind of, they're my statistics. That's kind of what I work to. If you're ready to move, no matter how bad you feel, you can find a new job within 3 months and go to that job with renewed confidence, and you can go into that feeling great. But you've got to take the first step. You've got to start creating that plan. And even if you've never had a career plan, even if you've never created any kind of plan for like moving from job to job, it's just about going, right, okay, I'm going to stop now and I'm going to create a plan. So the plan might just be to feel happy going into work. What do I need to do? And it could be that you need to tackle, a toxic work environment. It could be that, there could be a whole range of things that you need to do, but it's just taking that first step and acknowledging that it's time to make a change, and then putting a timeline on that and working towards it. So every day you should be taking action towards that change.
I love it. I mean, I think this is going to be so useful for a lot of people. There's positive comments coming through as well. Guys, if you're watching this, let us know how you feel about this, and obviously if it resonates and helps. So how can people find you in terms of like learning more about what you do and stuff like that? Because I'm sure that people who are stuck in career jail need like a shining light, as like one of the clients called you. He's like, she was my shining light to get out the job. And I remember him being like super happy. It kind of changed his life. And I think it does. One of the biggest problems I find when I work with men is that their careers drag them down, the unhappiness or just the sheer magnitude of pressure that people are put under, or never seeing their kids or their wife and stuff like that. So this is, for me, and that's why I've asked you on. And, we've been friends for a long time. We've always spoken about this. And I just feel that, you really change a lot of mindsets and attitudes in the mastermind when you come on. And I think, you're really experienced with this. So if people wanted to ask you any questions or get in touch with you or see any of your, stuff to help, what could they do and how can they find you?
I think the best place to find me is on LinkedIn, and I'm pretty much on LinkedIn every day. There's loads of stuff that you can, there's loads of free stuff as well on LinkedIn, loads of tips and guidance on various aspects of careers. So I'd say find me on LinkedIn, because that's probably the easiest place. You can just put in Pamela Langan or Queen of Careers, as I go by these days. So if you put either of them into the search, you will find me. I don't think there's anybody else with that name. So
it's a master name. It's a great name.
It's trademarked as well. So.
Oh, yeah, you trademark it.
It's trademarked, so yeah.
All right, so quick fire questions. What is your mission in your life?
My mission, that's a good question, isn't it? So my mission is to help as many professionals find work that they love, that that they're proud of, and pays them the salary they deserve. That is my mission.
I love that. And where do you see yourself in 10 years?
In 10 years, I see myself on a beach in Barbados drinking cocktails.
Wow, my attic.
Yeah.
Best piece of advice you ever got?
The best piece of advice that I've ever had is, when you think you've got no options, you've always got options.
I love it. And worst?
The worst advice is probably just suck it up. When I was in the corporate world, just suck it up and carry on. You don't need. It's
the same as man up, right? It's the same as someone says to me, "Oh, man up." Like, literally, you are heading for a beating. Okay, Pam, thank you for taking time out. I know you're a busy lady, and this will go up on the podcast, and I'm sure many people will get benefits from watching this back, and hopefully, you can maybe get some guys to actually lift their career and be happy. And I think someone's just made a really great comment, Neil. We spend a long time at work, so why not be happy there? And I think that I think in different elements of our life, we look for different things. I think when we're young, we hunt the money, right? Like that we all do. We've all been there. And then suddenly you get to a place where you're like, I want to be home at 5. I want to put my kid to bed. I don't want stress levels. And then we look for more emotional connections to a job, right? Happiness, fulfillment, balance. And I think that's really important. But mate, thanks for coming on.
You're welcome.
Guys, thanks for listening. Thanks for being here. If you're listening, please just drop a comment, or if you're on the podcast, leave a review. Let us know what you thought of this particular podcast. That would be great. And I'm going to stop this live stream now.